evening and welcome to Battle Tested History, episode 13.
Yeah, I never really thought we're doing a massacre on the 13th episode.
Well, and as Scott alluded to, we are doing what I feel perfectly encompasses the feeling of February 14th. I'm referring, of course, to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Yeah.
Um, Now, in history, everything is context. You have to have a context to understand what the history that took place. So you can't, in 2023, judge what happened in 1929. So, anyway, Chicago is a city that probably should have never happened. It's built on a swamp. It's named for a native word for the river, the Chichagoo, which means bad smell. Okay? So they built this originally on a swamp around Lake Michigan. Well, not surprisingly, every time it rained hard, the city streets would flood. So what did these guys do? There we go. Oh, that's gotta be Jen. Hello, my friends. That's gotta be Jennifer. Anyway, so what they did is they literally took the buildings, lifted them up, and backfilled under them. Okay, that bit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail
Yeah.
about the vast tracts of land.
Yes.
Okay, the castle that kept getting built, falling into the swamp,
Yeah. So we built
burning
another one.
down, burnt down, fell into the swamp. That was Chicago. Because, okay, they built this, they raised the streets, everything's going fine. 1871, a third of the city burned to the ground. I mean, we're talking total devastation. That's the Great Chicago Fire.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, let's write this off. Forget it. No. Well, not people in Chicago said, we're going to rebuild it. So they did, but they couldn't build out so much because all the prime real estate was right there on the lakefront. So they built up,
Mm.
and thus creating the very first skyscraper, which was an insurance building that was like 11 stories tall. That was the very first one ever.
And weren't they able to build that because somebody in Chicago came up with the elevator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Chicago went from utterly devastated. By the end of the century, they hosted the World's Fair
Mm-hmm.
in a completely rebuilt city. They also hosted H.H. Holmes, the America's first serial killer, but that's a lot. So, okay, they get back from that. Century turns. 1922, the U.S. government gives organized crime the greatest gift ever,
Yeah.
otherwise known as prohibition. Enter Mr. Alphonse Capone.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to let Scott discuss the movie
Right.
that we base
The,
this little thing on.
the movie is actually surprisingly good. Um, I always watch the movie and then do the research, and I was really impressed at how accurate this movie was. Um, it's a very well made movie. Roger Corman directed it, he did a fantastic job. He put the same effort into capturing the historical reality as he did into his horror movies and his chillers. And it all takes place, it evolves around the war between um, Capone, who owns most of the city, and Bugsy Malone, who Ralph Mika
Moran. Moran.
Moran, I'm sorry, Bugsy Moran, who Ralph Mika plays in the movie. Capone is played by Jason Robards, and they're constantly having the battles break out. They go into the details about how every once in a while the politicians and the police would step in, and everybody would sort of like in The Godfather, they'd shake hands. And Bugsy though just didn't buy this. And there's some really great scenes in the movie where he makes several attempts on Capone's life and fails every single time. So Capone just goes ape shit at one point, and he decides he's not going to let the North Side be taken over by Bugsy. That's it. Despite all of the warnings I get from his staff, his right hand man, his hitmen, and that, he decides he's going to take out Bugsy. And this one guy in the group, he's the one that comes out, agrees to it. I can't remember his name. In the movie, he's a tall, good-looking kiss ass.
Machine Gun Gas. Jack McGurn.
Yes, McGurn. Thank you. And he says it should be done. So Capone gives it to him, and everybody hates him for this because he sucked it up. And the movie it does few flashbacks to give you what's going on, but it goes into the lives of the 7 people who were there at the garage. 2 of Bugsy's hitmen, one played by George Siegel. God, I can't remember their names.
I have it written down.
It was like German, I think.
Pete and Frank Gusenberg.
And they were the really mean ones of the group. I mean, they were the ones, they picked on people, they flaunted their authority. One of the guys wasn't even a gangster. He was a former doctor who just had this interest in the mob. And he retired, and he'd go there and, hey, down Dungeon Dam, and he'd go there and just hang around them. He was a pain in the ass, but they liked him. One of the other guys wasn't even mob related. He was a mechanic, and they knew him, and they could trust him to keep his mouth shut. So he was called in on that. They asked him, would you mind fixing the cars for us? We won't have you do anything. Just repair them. We'll give you the money. You can get yourself. He was like 3 months behind on his rent. And the whole thing was set up to, they were luring Bugsy Malone into this garage. This is where he'd meet. And they had the whole thing set up. They had, 2 of their gunmen from New York City. Nobody knew them. They were brought down secretly. They were dressed as cops, and they showed up there was a lookout, and the lookouts swore that they saw Bugsy and his 2 hitmen, 2 cronies go into the building. They were wrong. Bugsy showed up after. He showed up when the cops showed up. So they figured, let's go get a cup of coffee. We'll wait this out. Nothing's going to happen. The cops went in. The cops arrest everybody, take their firearms, put them against the wall. And while they're preparing to arrest them, the other 2 gunmen come in. Capone's people. And there's a very graphic, but probably one of the most historically accurate scenes where the 7 people in there, the guy who was in the mob, the Goosakers, was it?
The doctor?
No. It was
the 2 Gusenberg.
The Goosenbergs, the mechanic, the guy who was the doctor, and a couple of others were put against the wall, and they were just butchered. I mean, they let go. These four let go on them with machine guns, Thompson machine guns, and shotguns. And then what they did was the two Italians dropped the weapons, and the cops brought them outside, put them in the back, and took off. So everybody knew something went wrong, but nobody wanted to go in. And somebody does go in, finds the 7 bodies, and of course it goes through the town like wildfire. And there's this great scene where Bugsy and his 2 henchmen are sitting there having coffee, and somebody bursts into the restaurant and says, "Oh my God, 7 people were just killed down at the garage, including Bugsy Moran." So now Bugsy he avoided it. He realized shit, and he got out of town pretty quickly. And I think almost every one of us know Capone got away with it. There was nothing to link him at all with this. I think most of the gunmen wound up dead. 2 of them pulled shit on, tried to take over.
Well, yeah, that was one part where the movie diverged from
that was okay.
Real history.
Okay.
Nobody has ever. The only one they can pretty successfully tie to it is a guy by the name of Fred Killer Burke.
Oh yes, that's right.
He was arrested for killing a cop a couple of years later, and they found a box of shells, of 45 shells.
There were
that matched what was used at the massacre.
You're right. No, you're right. That's right. They never did find it. Except for him, they never found the killers.
Nope.
And one of them, Frank Gusenberg, who was the most high-ranking, didn't die immediately. And the police came to him in the hospital, and they kept on telling him, tell us who it is. We can take Capone out. We know it's Capone. Just tell us who it is. And he said on his deathbed, "Nobody shot me. Leave me alone." And they never got him. And ironically, they catch Capone. They catch Capone years later for tax fraud.
Yeah. Again, we have context.
Yeah.
Capone, Moran, all of those guys had been killing each other off.
Yeah.
For 5 years.
Yeah.
There'd been a war going on for 5 years, and I love these names.
Yeah.
These names are just so awesome. So you had 2 gangs. The North Side, which was the Irish.
Right.
And the South Side, which were the Italians.
Yeah.
The Italians were run by Big Gene Colosimo.
Yeah.
With Johnny Torrio as his number 2 man.
No.
Capone worked for Johnny Torrio.
Mm-hmm.
Colosimo, when Prohibition came along, only wanted enough booze to keep his restaurant and the couple of bars he owned. That's all he wanted. He didn't want to get into bootlegging, which was insane.
Yeah.
Because there was just so much money to be made.
Yeah.
So Johnny Torrio says, well, if he don't want to do it, he's got to go. So Capone goes in, takes him out. And it was just, that was the way things worked. That great bit in The Untouchables, right?
Yeah.
Where Sean Connery is saying, that's the Chicago way.
Yeah.
That was the way it worked.
Yeah.
If you hit one of ours, we hit one of yours.
Yeah.
That's the way it worked. So, Colosimo gets taken out. Torrio takes over. Capone becomes number 2.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the Northsiders were run by a guy named Dion O'Banion.
Yes.
He was the number one guy.
Yes.
Um, they decided, O'Banion screwed Johnny Torrio.
Yeah.
Um, set him up with, he was selling him a brewery that
Mhm.
O'Banion knew was about to be raided. So he sells it to Torrio. Torrio is there when the cops raided.
Mm.
He gets screwed out of his money.
Mhm.
The brewery gets shut down. He gets thrown in jail for almost a year. Well, they ain't gonna let that one sit.
No.
So O'Banion, who was a florist
Yeah.
of all things, um, okay, there was one guy essentially who was keeping the peace
Mhm.
between the two gangs. It was he was the head of the Union Solution. Name was Mike Marlowe.
Mhm.
He was the moderator. They agreed that all disputes would be moderated through this guy. Well, he died, and it's like, well, okay then. So three guys go in to get flowers
Yeah.
for Malow's funeral.
Mhm.
One of them grabs O'Banion's hand, and O'Banion carries three guns on him at
Mhm.
all times. Grabbed his hand to shake it, took control of his arm, and the other two guys blasted away.
Mm.
Boom, O'Banion's dead. Well, Darksiders were going to take that laying down.
Mhm.
So Jaime Weiss, who took over the north side, he tries taking out Torrio. And he actually shoots Torrio several times, but he doesn't die.
Mhm.
But that's enough for him. He's like, I'm done. Al, it's all yours. So now Al Capone, at the age of 26,
Mhm.
is the head of the South Side Chicago gang. And that's no small feat.
No.
So they eventually take out Weiss,
Mhm.
which brings Vincent Drucci, I love that name, Drucci, in as the number one man. Well, Drucci tries to take out Capone at the age of 12, that's right. Well, that was in New York. But, yeah, so Drucci tried to take out Capone by running first one car by this restaurant that Capone was in,
Yeah.
firing with the Thompson submachine gun, otherwise called the Chicago typewriter. Yeah. But it's firing blanks. So the idea was everybody dives
Yeah.
to get out of the gunfire, and then the gunfire stops, everybody gets back up. Three more cars come by, not firing blanks,
Yeah.
and just rock the place. And still, nobody ends up dying.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to sit for that. Drucci ends up getting into a fight with a cop and gets shot in the backseat of a cop car. Oop, no more Drucci, which means Bugs Moran is now in charge of the North Side.
Mm.
Um, and Al Capone decides, enough of this. I'm going to take them all out in one shot, which leads to the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And up until this point, the people of Chicago really didn't care
Yeah.
because they were just killing each other off.
Right.
And it was like one at a time. Well, this time they killed seven people in one shot.
Yeah.
And the people of Chicago were like, dude, you guys just crossed the line. That it ain't acceptable.
Yeah.
Which is where you get the feds step in, the untouchables, and turns out Elliot Ness really didn't do much.
Mm.
He basically did a few highly publicized raids, and that was it. Ness didn't get Capone; the IRS did.
Yeah.
But that's how it all progressed. One kills another, he gets killed, and that.
Yeah.
The Chicago way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did this, they did the fictionalized version of all that in The Godfather.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre just got everybody in the city so upset that the mobs had to start calming down for a while. They, all the killings, the assassinations,
Yeah,
but people still wanted their booze.
yeah. People still wanted their booze, and this was 1929.
Yes.
February 1929
Right.
was when uh, the Valentine's Day Massacre happened. Well, October 1929 is the Great Depression.
Yes. Yeah.
Al Capone, who everybody knew, was behind the massacre, reinvents himself, opens up a bunch of soup kitchens.
Yeah.
He's taking care of the people of Chicago, which he actually did.
Right.
Um, the thing about organized crime in Chicago is that it worked. I grew up there, and at the time, they have a mayor, Mayor Richard J. Daley, who was by no stretch of the imagination an honest man. But the city was always in the black. It was never in the red.
Mm.
It ran like clockwork.
Yeah.
Then he died of a heart attack while he was still mayor, and the city went in the red from then on. It's yes, it was illegal. Yes, they killed each other, but it worked.
And they allude to that a lot in the movie, like where they have the big ball, and the I think it was the district attorney, or the mayor, the guy running for mayor was there, and they're discussing, well, should we give him the money for his campaign and make sure he gets in, and it was a corruption, but like you said, it was a corruption where Capone did things. Capone opened the soup kitchens. So, yeah, he might have been a bad guy, but to the people of Chicago, to all the people who wanted booze and were doing, the sleepeasies and all that, it was, he was a hero to them.
Yeah, he was. But
And I also find fascinating that after he went into jail, the U.S. government used him during World War II, because they used to he made sure, as long as he got good treatment in jail, and if I remember, he had like his own private cell, prepared meals, books, comfortable chair. He made sure that the union workers on the docks did what they were told. That if they saw any Nazi espionage, they reported it. And he pretty much kept those docks running so we could ship off the supplies to England and to our boys overseas.
yeah, well, the whole reason Chicago exists really is that there's a major railhead there.
Yeah.
At the time, everything that crossed the United States went through Chicago. Everything did. So if there was a problem with the supply chain in Chicago, it shut the whole country down.
Yeah.
So, but the government made the same deal with what was his name, the New York guy, uh, Lucky Marciano.
Oh yes, yeah,
Yeah, they did the same thing with him to help out in Italy.
yeah.
Hey, it works.
It worked, yeah. And I mean, that was even still the time when the mafia wasn't considered among the population. Didn't have a bad. It had a very violent reputation, but it was still, they kept to themselves. I think it was only when they started getting involved in the drug trade that and then when they started to get selfish,
Yeah.
and they hoarded all the money for themselves. That's when it started to take the turn.
Well,
Yolanda.
I was born in '61,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you remember when all the drive-bys started happening
Yes.
in every city? It seemed
Yeah.
like, except Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
because the boys
Mm-hmm.
they ran, they were running drugs, but the street gangs were the ones who were distributing it.
Yeah.
If the street gang leaders got a little too uppity, got a little too public with what they were doing, they disappeared.
Yeah.
They ended up in the bottom of the lake
Yeah.
with cement overshoes.
Yes.
It was Lyrian style.
Yeah. But it was cement from Italy, so they were nice cement
If
overshoes.
they were Italian,
Yeah.
forget about it. But yeah, but so for the longest time, drive-bys did not happen in Chicago until crack became prevalent.
Mm.
Reason being, you didn't need a lot of startup capital
Right.
to start a drug business with crack
Yeah.
because it was so easy to make
Mm-hmm.
and you could make ungodly sums of money out of it. So the mob was taken out of it. That's when the drive-by started happening in Chicago.
Yeah. It
Again, the
is.
mob worked.
It is a good. I mean, it is a very historically accurate movie, and Jeff and I do not like most history movies. They're so bullshitted. This one really isn't. There's a few minor details that are different, like Aiello being shot by Capone on the train. That happened a year later. His right hand man during the scenes when Capone's chewing him out. He's a really good looking, suave, debonair Italian guy. Apparently, in real life, he looked like Jabba the Hutt. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's really, I knew very little about this period of history going into it. Everything I knew was from watching The Untouchables as a kid with
Robert Stack.
Robert Stack, or watching the really good but historically inaccurate movie with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner. This movie and then the research afterwards really opened my eyes to a lot of it. I highly recommend it. You can find it free on YouTube.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
The the one real drawback to the movie
Mm.
was the person they cast
Yeah.
as Al Capone. It was
Mm.
Richard Widmark. Okay, Capone, number one, was Italian.
Yes.
Richard Widmark ain't.
Robot, you mean?
Jason Robards, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Jason Robards. Um, Also, Capone was a big guy.
Yeah, he
Big,
was.
barrel chested, strapping dude. Jason Robards
Yeah.
isn't. It just, De Niro did a pretty good job of it. His accent was a little too New York.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the actor Dennis Farina?
Yes.
Okay. He was in like Oh, that one with Bruce Willis on the he was a riverboat cop. You know the one I'm talking striking distance.
I don't remember that one, but okay.
Yeah, striking distance.
All right.
And Dennis Farina was a Chicago cop before he became an actor. He's got an authentic Chicago accent.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard to fake. Like, when they fake Boston accents in movies, like when Sean Penn did it, it was like, okay, nice try, but no.
Yeah.
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 But
New York isn't hard because
No.
everybody's heard it.
Yeah.
Chicago's a little bit
Yeah.
kind of flat and and everybody's a tough guy.
Yeah.
That's the way everybody was. Everybody was a tough guy.
You had to be. Yeah.
Well, we used to beat the shit out of each other for fun.
It
That
was like this. It was
yeah.
like the South End in Boston.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the North End. That was, if you didn't stand up for yourself and kick, even if you got your ass kicked, if you didn't at least try.
I had this one guy I used to hang out with who lived in one of the houses one of Capone's underlings lived in. So when Capone set up shop in Cicero, which is just on the edge of the city. I was born in Berwyn, which is right next to Cicero.
I'm sorry, Spingooli went through my mind when you said Berwyn.
Berwyn.
I almost held up my rubber chicken.
Berwyn, yes, actually exists.
Yeah.
And I was born there, which could explain some things. But yeah, so they would keep their families out in what was then the suburbs. Where the hell was I going with that? I forget where the hell I was going with that. Mind is a terrible thing.
Happens when you get our age.
Yeah, it does. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, this was it. Yeah, they were criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were vicious, brutal killers. But it wasn't the random insanity it is now.
No.
It was organized.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, it was an organized crime.
And when I was growing up, it was just this side of a completely legitimate business.
Yeah.
In fact, I worked for a guy by the name of Nick Giancana, who was Sam Giancana's nephew. The fruit fell really far from the tree on that one.
Oh.
Yeah. But anyway.
Well, it's funny, too, because you're saying about the organized crime. I mean, there was, in my hometown of Everett, right outside of Boston, there was a waste management presence there. And what's funny now is they're not there anymore. It's everyone else. It's Chinese. It was my sister and my brother-in-law tell this funny joke. There was a Romanian coffee shop on one of the main streets. So they wanted to try it one day. It was near the home. It was Saturday. They went down, they walked in. And the minute they walked in, all these Romanians are looking at them like, who are you? And, my brother-in-law's sister asked for a cup of coffee. Took them 15 minutes to figure out how to use the coffee machine. That's when it started to dawn on my brother-in-law, like, oh shit, we're in a gangster hideout. But they made good coffee. So. Yeah.
Well, that was when I was growing up. Everybody that I knew either knew somebody or knew somebody who knew somebody
Yes.
who worked for the mob
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Because they were into everything.
Hmm.
They were into trucking and the stockyards, which were still there when I was born. Those closed down in like 72 or 3.
Ah.
The stench was terrible.
Ah.
I mean, it was most of the time the wind would come down the lake and push all that stench
Hmm.
into Indiana. But every now and then the wind would shift and it was wrong.
Ah.
But, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were into everything.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's definitely a good movie, definitely worth watching. Um, I know a lot of people complained about the sets, but I mean, yeah, the sets were more 1930s than 1920s, but you know, I didn't even notice it until I was reading some of the reviews of the movie later.
If
It's
that's what
definitely,
they if that's what they're picking on,
yeah,
it's a pretty good movie.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And like there was one page I was looking, I don't remember it. They reviewed historical movies and they said, and I think I said this earlier, the only movie that was more historically accurate up until that time was The Longest Day.
And that is more or less accurate.
More or less, they took a lot of like John Wayne's character and somebody else's character were in their late 20s, early 30s. They weren't 50-year
Yeah.
old guys storming the
Yeah.
beaches of Normandy. But
Right.
yeah, and it's a fascinating way to kick off because, like I said, I did a lot of research on it, and I find it fascinating the history of the mob back then versus what it's become now.
Yeah, it was. And back then, really what they were doing was they were providing what everybody wanted.
Mm,
They were providing booze,
yeah,
gambling, prostitution. Everybody wanted those things.
yeah. And when it became an issue,
Criminal, it
and
was
when it became,
criminal, yeah, but
yeah,
I mean,
but prohibition turned 75% of the country into criminals because if you
exactly.
if you drank a beer, you were violating the law. So, and it was what made organized crime powerful in this country. They weren't that powerful before this. They had their hands in a lot of things, but
Yeah,
you
they were
know,
locally powerful, but that's
yeah.
it.
But after prohibition, it just and then when they finally got rid of prohibition, well, the mob was in place. It was now there.
Yeah. Capone's breweries,
Mm,
just they were making their own beer.
yeah,
Those breweries were making 60 million a year in 1929.
yeah. Imagine what that is today.
Yeah,
Yeah. But he didn't get to enjoy it too much once he got into jail.
yeah. Well, that once the syphilis started eating away at him,
I know.
'cause that's what he died of. He had syphilis that was never treated,
Yeah.
and it affected his brain.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to 10 years. Started out in some federal penitentiary in Tennessee, and then Alcatraz opened.
Mm,
He was one of the first prisoners in Alcatraz.
ah.
But about 7 years or so into his sentence, it was his mind was gone.
Yeah.
So they decided that he wasn't a danger to anybody.
Mm,
And they let him go.
mm,
And he would, yeah, his cronies, Frank Mitty was the guy who took over for him.
yeah.
Frank the Enforcer Mitty. Oh, they had some great names, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like Two Gun Louis Altieri.
Yeah.
That was the one Italian in the north side
Mm,
gang leadership. The
Hmm.
rest were all Irishmen or Germans. Machine Gun Jack McGurn. Um, shit, what else? Vincent Trucci. Heidi Weiss. I mean, what great names.
Yeah.
It
When did Capone die?
1947.
Okay.
January of 1947.
So,
He was still in Miami, and they moved his body up to Chicago, buried him there.
yeah.
Actually, right across from Dion O'Banion, Jaime Weiss,
No.
and Drucci.
So pretty much, if you went to the cemetery, you could just see all the bigwigs right there.
It's in Mount Carmel Cemetery
Uh,
in Chicago.
Got to get back to Chicago. I was there in '84. And that was the last time I was in Chicago. And then, even then, I was only passing through.
Strawberries. The best part about that Strawberries skit on Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
was that I literally knew people like that. Oh yeah. Ditka versus
The
the
Bears.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay. Okay, Ditka versus God. Now that's a trick question. Ditka is God.
I knew people like that, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, when you're sitting there watching it, for you it was like for me when they made fun of Bostonians, it was like my wife gets the biggest kick out of Everybody Loves Raymond. With the older Italian ladies with the plastic on the furniture. And I used to tell her, that's not funny. That happened. My mother, who wasn't Italian, she wouldn't let us sit on the new sofa for 6 months because we might, hurt it. So when we were in the living room, we had to stand in front of the sofa and watch TV.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even allowed in my living room. Literally, I wasn't even allowed in there.
Yeah, I remember one of my friends, they had this nice room that was never used. It was beautiful furniture, but you were only allowed to look through the doorway at it.
That's it.
Yeah.
We would go in there like Christmas Day. That was about it.
Yeah.
The old days.
Yeah, I miss them.
Well, yeah. What year were you born?
63.
63. So yeah, we were born about the same time.
I was born about 6 months before Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah, I was like 2.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I remember Bobby. I remember Martin Luther King, but I don't remember JFK.
Now, my first political memory was watching the Apollo spacecraft take off for the moon.
Yeah.
And then the next one I remember was my grandfather slapping me on the back of the head, telling me to watch TV because this was the first time a president has ever resigned. And all I could remember thinking was, just put on the damn cartoons.
Yeah.
Who the hell is Nixon? I want to see Bugs Bunny.
Exactly.
Did any of you out there watching it, did any of you get to watch the movie? If so, what did you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect any fast responses to that. But
No.
I could expect some smart ass ones from like Dungeon Dan. He shot the sheriff.
Dungeon Dan's gonna make us an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, my parents took me to see that in theater.
Yes.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
10? Maybe?
Yeah. We were on vacation when we went to see it. I remember the next morning, I made my mother pull the covers down and reassure me that there was no horse's head in my bed because that scene bothered me. Of course, in my case, it would have been a horse's ass, but
there was in Sam's Town here in Vegas. There was a bar within that casino where they had a mounted horse's ass behind the bar. I always wanted one of those.
No, I mean, the other thing too is there's still a mystique and an aura.
That's Jen. That's absolutely Jennifer.
She wouldn't last 5 minutes where.
Jen doesn't watch more than 5 minutes of any movie.
Oh.
It's uncanny.
I give a movie 10 minutes. If I'm not interested in 10 minutes, I delete it and go to something else. So
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll just, I'm not in the mood for this right now,
yes.
and I'll go on. But
Yeah. Well, I get what pisses me off is I find a movie. I found 3 movies that look really great, but they're subtitled. And
yeah,
I have to like take an hour or 2 out of my day to watch it. I can't watch it in the background while I'm doing something. So there's a bunch of them I haven't seen yet.
yeah, there's a lot of those. Yeah, Dan keeps giving me he keeps giving me these files for. I'm dying. Yes, it's Jen. Of course you are. Um, you can send me these movies that are like Korean and Japanese.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, okay, like zombie ass.
Oh my God, Toilet of the Dead. Oh, that was the worst movie I had ever seen.
That is such a fucked up movie.
Yeah.
But
I almost shut it off, but then it was like, no, I'm gonna stick through this one.
it's one of those movies you see once.
Yes.
Only once.
Right.
To say you did.
And then you're proud to say, I did it. I sat through the whole thing.
God only knows why.
Now, if we're gonna be talking mobs and that, I'm looking forward to see the somewhat mob-related movie coming out, Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear does sound pretty good.
That's
one of the few ones that new releases that I'm looking forward to.
That's probably the only one. I've seen the previews to that one. That looks like it's going to be hysterical. And yes, Dan, there is a movie. What was it?
Oh yeah, well he knows about zombie ass.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he knows.
Oh yeah. Yep, I couldn't believe I spent money watching that one. They should have paid me.
Possibly. Probably.
And it wasn't a good gory movie like Tokyo Gore Police.
I know, it was just so over the top bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it's all shit.
Yeah, it's toilet humor.
Yeah, literally.
With Japanese girls.
Yes. Which probably went over big in Germany, but
yeah. Well, the Japanese have a very bizarre obsession.
Yes.
With female underwear.
God, yeah.
God.
When I was serving in Okinawa, that was the big thing. 16-year-old Japanese schoolgirls would make like $1,000 a month selling their underwear. And it was perfectly legal. You could do anything to a Japanese girl from the age of 14 to 18 as long as there was no intercourse. Everything else was legal, and these girls were making tons of money.
People, well, that it goes back to organized crime.
Yeah.
People want they want to get high.
Yes.
They want to gamble. They want to get laid.
Mm-hmm.
They have always wanted these things.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to give it to them.
Exactly.
It can either be regulated and watched over, or the criminal element can do it.
Yeah. Well, that's what was great about Amsterdam. I mean, they have those areas of the city. You go in, you do what you want, You know, they police it so there's no crime. You just don't bring that shit outside the boundary.
Yep, Australia. Cities are allowed to have either legalized gambling or legalized prostitution,
Ooh.
one or the other. Both are regulated. I mean,
Yeah.
the prostitutes in the Australian places where that's legal are monitored by the health department.
What was the name of that ranch in Nevada?
The Mustang Ranch,
Yes, the Mustang
it's
Ranch. Yeah.
still there, I guess, in Pahrump.
Yeah.
It's up the mountain
Yeah.
west of
No,
here.
I mean, that's, you make money. You make money on your vices.
People have always wanted it.
Yeah.
They're always going to want it.
I mean, look at all the porn sites out there today, the pay-per-view sites. They make bringing in millions, if not more.
Oh yeah, it's you cannot legislate morality,
No, you
which is
can't.
what they tried to do with prohibition.
Right.
Prohibition was the dumbest thing we could have done,
Yeah. And it
but we
didn't
did
work.
it. Of course, it didn't work.
That's why I've always said you don't ban anything. If you ban, there was a movie that came out years ago. It was a Czechoslovakian made movie, and it was the story of the Virgin Mary and told in communist Czechoslovakia. And I remember the archdiocese in Boston screamed and yelled about it. And I had to go see the movie. It was like, oh my God, this is so bad. And when I went, my girlfriend at the time and I went, there were police and you had to go through security checks and there were protesters. And we sat and watched the movie and the movie sucked. It was horrible. Yes, I was offended, not for religious reasons, but because I wasted my time watching this piece of crap, which nobody would have gone to see if the thought police didn't say, oh, you can't watch that.
Yeah, I mean, I've read most of the books that are on the banned list. I've read most of those books, and some of them are Harry Potter. Harry Potter's been banned in some. It's like,
I know.
The fuck. Yeah. It's just stupid.
No, it's you've got a right to read or watch what you want. The only time the line can be drawn is if what you're saying, watching, or reading says commit acts of violence.
Well, basically, in the United States, a United States citizen has the right to do whatever the hell they want.
Exactly.
Right up until what they want to do affects somebody else.
Yes.
For example, you can get shit-faced, fallen down drunk whenever you want. You cannot then get behind the wheel of a car. Exactly.
Unless you're Ted Kennedy.
Unless you're Ted Kennedy.
I'm sorry.
Chappaquiddick.
I used to have a bumper when I lived in Boston. I had a bumper sticker on my car that said, "My gun has killed fewer people than Ted Kennedy's car." Oh, did I get a lot of people pissed at me?
I'll bet.
But I get a lot of people who would honk the horn and drive by and give me the thumbs up.
Yep.
Though, there was a politician who knew the game.
Yeah.
Ted Kennedy, whether you liked him or didn't like him, he was the senator for the people of Massachusetts. And my best friend who was arch conservative, was in an accident in the military. For 18 months, the military was claiming this happened on a Saturday night. That was your own time. And he's saying, no, I'm active duty. I'm 24/7. And for 18 months, this went around until somebody called up Ted Kennedy's office and said, do you know that you have a constituent that's getting screwed over by the Pentagon? Kennedy's staff looked into it, and like 6 months later, not only did my friend get his pension, he got it 18 months retroactive.
Sweet.
because of Senator Kennedy. And I always used to call him up on election day and say to him, "So, who are you going to vote for?" And then he'd swear at me, call me names, and then he'd go out and vote for Kennedy.
Yeah, it's not like that anymore, though.
No, that's it. That's it. At least the politicians back then worked with it. Reagan and Kennedy worked with each other. They might they might like yell at each other on the floor, but they'd get together, have a beer. Nowadays, it's just like you can't say anything.
Reagan and Chip O'Neill, the Democratic Speaker of the House,
Yes.
they'd call each other names all day long, and then 2 or 3 times a week they'd get together for dinner.
Yeah.
And they'd work shit out.
Yeah.
They'd come to an agreement.
Yeah. We've lost that today. It's just
gone. It's long gone. There is no middle anymore.
No, there isn't.
And unfortunately, that's where things get done. There's a great assessment from Shelby Foote, the historian featured prominently in Ken Burns' Civil War documentary, which is awesome.
Best documentary ever.
Yes, exactly. It won the Oscar, and good damn right should have.
Yeah.
But Shelby Foote pointed out that oh shit, I just lost my train of thought. God damn it.
We were talking about no middle ground.
No middle ground, yeah. The one thing that Americans have always been best at is compromise.
Yeah.
Civil War, we weren't compromising.
No.
Nowadays, we are not compromising.
No.
Is it any surprise shit doesn't work?
No.
Because you can't exactly go in and do it the Chicago way.
Yeah, and I mean, I know people on both sides of the spectrum that abandon their side because, yes, they may be pro or anti-abortion or pro-gun control or anti-gun control, but the extremes on both sides get to the point that they can't accept that.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who's pro-abortion, but they're like, no way can you kill a child like one day after it's born? So they wind up either not voting or voting the other way.
Yeah, it's you gotta let people be who they are.
Exactly.
You've got to let them be who they are.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, right now, if I say anything that's even mildly to the left of what the extreme right says, I'm a liberal. It's what the fuck?
Oh, I know. I am considered the liberal of my family because I only own 7 guns.
Because you haven't got a Sherman tank in your garage.
I didn't say I didn't have a tank. I said I only have 7 guns.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that brings us to the end of the hour.
Yeah. It's a great. I still recommend. It's a great movie.
Because I will get pissed. Yeah.
It's free on YouTube. Yes.
You're absolutely correct.
See, I don't mind when people start mouthing off their political, even if it's something I agree with. I always take the other side just to piss them off.
I used to do that. I finally got tired of it and I walk away.
Oh, but sometimes it's just so much fun.
Oh, it is so much fun, but it's like it's gotten nastier and nastier and nastier. Yeah. Now you've got to hate the other side.
Oh God, I know.
You can't disagree with them. You got to hate them.
Yes.
Anyway, so what do you got going on?
I am hopefully this week going to finish up the first draft of Nurse Alyssa 9, which I'm shooting for an April 1st. And I've got the Rota World series. My first 3 zombie books are out on Amazon in a box set, 99 cents. Just look up the Rota World saga. You can get all 3 books for 99 cents. I'm having problems putting the print edition because I didn't realize that you can only publish a book on Amazon 840 pages. When I put all 3 books together, it was over 1,000. So I have to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about doing it, but yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
The 18th, February 18th, Saturday,
Uh-huh.
we are going to be doing an early podcast. It's 9 in the morning Pacific time. So that, so it'd be what, 11 your time? No, 12.
Pacific time? I think
Yeah,
noon.
it'd be noon your time. It's so that Jen can actually
Okay.
attend one.
And what's
But
the
we're doing it about writing because I've got stuff coming out. You have stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Richard Ryan Rose has stuff coming out. So did Jack Childress. So did Jen Amato.
Yeah.
Dan Ubell
Yeah.
is working on his first stuff. We've got some really good, promising new writers.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of highlight them.
I will see what I can do. Things in the household are very iffy because we have a family member who's getting ready to pass on.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I'm telling you about it now. If you
all right.
make it,
I'll note it
awesome.
down.
We're going to start doing more of those things, more
Yeah.
writing related stuff.
Yeah.
So we can start talking about this thing that we do.
Yeah. No, I love it when I go to certain conventions. There's one convention I go to in Vermont, and they have the 2 days, they have several panels on writing for people who want, and I'm on every single one of them. I had 2 really good writers in my corner helping me, advising me, giving me encouragement. Brian Keene and JF Gonzalez. And when I said to them once, how can I thank you? They told me, pay it forward.
Well, yeah, I didn't have anybody.
Oh.
And that's why I'm doing it.
But
because I wish I had.
Oh, but I'm waiting for the 3rd book in the Yellowstone series to come out.
That's coming next.
Yes.
When I should finish Death and Destruction, the latest Epic Mayhem book.
Yeah.
Around Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Then I'm going to republish Crawl to update some of the references.
Okay.
And then I'm going to finish Dan Tall.
All right.
And then it'll be time for Carnival of Carnage. That should be a lot of fun.
Now, is that one of the Guardians of the Apocalypse?
What's that?
The Carnival of Carnage.
No, that will be another the Epic Mayhem book.
Okay, I got to get caught up on those.
The one after that, scheduled right now. We'll see what happens when I actually get there. But it will be Murphy's Law of Zombies.
Yes. Love that series.
I will do another Guardians book.
Good.
Yep. So there we have it.
All right.
Thanks to everybody that chimed in.
Yes.
Even the ones that decided to mimic Mark Zuckerberg and not tell us who they were.
Well, 2 of them. One of them was NSA. One of them was FBI. One was CIA. I think the Chinese are following this one.
And one was Jennifer Amato.
Yeah.
I wonder, could she be involved? Is it a conspiracy? Anyway, thanks to everybody. Thanks so much for showing up. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
All right. Ciao, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Try to keep the gunfire to a minimum.
Yes.
Yeah. They were all Jennifer. Yes, indeed. Take it easy, folks.
Ciao.